Here at Going Now, we're big fans of Multiverse, if you can't already tell. And when we were asked if we wanted to help get the word out about Multiverse and the many facets of it and the many people involved, of course we jumped at the chance to do so. And in doing so, we've created this great show for you here that you're going to see. And so, what is Multiverse? Well, here is the great Jesse Adams to tell you all about it.
We are a convention for fans from all backgrounds, any fans of science fiction, fantasy, horror, gaming, art, and generally just anything geeky at all. That's been one of the fun parts, is expanding outside of like traditional fandom, and because we realized that like people have different kind of stuff they nerd out about, right? It could be history or science or fountain pens, whatever it is. The common thread is that there's a strong interest in something that you want to share with people. So that's the point of conventions in my book, but also Multiverse in particular, is let everybody get together in an environment where everybody feels welcomed and included, like genuinely included. And it happens every October, third weekend of every October. This year it's October 20th through 22nd. In Atlanta, which I figure most people know, at the Westin Atlanta Perimeter North. All the stuff's at multiversecon.org.
Tonight we turn our attention to that goes bump in the night as we take a look at the geek horror track for the Multiverse Convention, run by director L. Marie Wood, who is a award-winning screenwriter, a award-winning novelist, and the dean at the Speculative Fiction Academy. Then we're joined by Mark L. Abbott, who is an indie author, an indie filmmaker and actor, and the host of one of my favorite things that happens at Multiverse, which we'll talk about. Then we'll take a look at another unique aspect of the Multiverse Convention as we turn the spotlight on Multiverse. Here's your host, Joe Compton. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spotlight. Going now, spotlighting the Multiverse Convention, and I have the incredible honor and privilege to be right next to one of my favorite people on this planet, not just in the multiverse, but also host. I think the first year I went to Multiverse, I spent 80% of it at your track. So I mean, when you find your people, right?
That's true.
So, I mean, I did a little bit of an introduction, but why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Lisa, and tell everybody who you are, and we'll talk a lot about what you do at Multiverse.
It was a really good intro. I loved it. I particularly loved that one picture that I took because I was so stunned when I got that trophy. And it's like I had just finished working out, so my hair's like sticking out, and I'm wearing this.
Which is it's on your right shoulder where I look at. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There we go. Oh, no, I'm pointing to the wrong. Yeah, there we go. And but I was so stunned that I took this crazy looking picture. When I think it's perfect because it's like totally me, of course. But I'm like, that is a workout, like the post workout. I'm so glad there were no sweat stains on the thing.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm L. Marie Wood, and obviously I like to laugh, which is kind of odd because I'm a psychological horror author. Whatever, it's what it is. This is the truth. I write novels, short stories, poetry now. I guess I've always written poetry, but like I'm really doing it in earnest, I guess. Screenplays. Now I'm doing essays. I kind of write everything. I have not written a graphic novel, but look, one of these days, I guess I'll do that. I am the horror track director at Multiverse, which is cool. It's neat, and I don't know. Yes, and I'm the president and founder of SFA, the Speculative Fiction Academy, which Joe is one of our esteemed, instructors there, and we teach pretty much everything I just talked about. We teach about, podcasting, screenwriting, novels, short stories, any genre. In terms of speculative, so horror, science fiction, fantasy, we do it all, and you're being taught by people who are actively working in the industry and have been, have gained some significant accolades for, you know, in the industry as well. And some of these folks, all of you folks blow my mind in terms of your knowledge, but like we've got I just can't. The instructor list is phenomenal. So if you're interested, take a look, you'll see. But you know, and a lot of those folks are part of Multiverse as well, which is a really amazing thing. So that's me.
Yeah, you've been on the Multiverse train since it started. Were you always the horror track director from the beginning?
From the beginning.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been great. What are we, 5 years now? Are we 5 years?
Yeah,
I
4 or
think
5.
we're
I think.
5 years. I've been doing it for 5 years, and it's kind of cool because for me, I really enjoy the conversation. You know, when I go to a con, I would rather have discussions. So I love being on panels. I love talking with people in between the panels. Like you'll find me stuck in a hallway or now stuck in my panel room, which is great because people come by to talk to me all the time. And it's such engaging conversation because, I mean, we write by ourselves, but we should be able to have conversation with other people. And I think that Multiverse is one of the best places to have that sort of interaction. Give me the pollen attacked me, and I'm just every time I think I'm doing better, all of a sudden I can feel my nose like bugging me. So I'm in that bugging nose moment. So pardon me if I'm rubbing my face.
And we appreciate you braving it and being on camera and doing this for us. So I really appreciate that a lot. One of the things that struck me and very interesting about the horror track that you present at Multiverse, which I think goes along with the Multiverse theme, is that there's a lot about diversity and inclusion and really not the typical horror topics that we see. Was that your aim from the beginning, was to kind of, let's be very different with how we present horror to an audience and talk about the things that nobody else is talking about?
Yeah. Well, yes, it was because, you know, as a psychological horror author, I'm on a different. So when people think horror, they just think in it anywhere, film or written word, they're thinking blood and guts,
Yeah.
and just gore and nasty. And I'm a psychological horror author, so there's some blood and guts, but there's a reason for it, and it's usually just not a whole lot of gore, and we don't get that nasty, you know. I mean, psychological horror and quiet horror kind of are on another spectrum from visceral and extreme. So when I would go to cons, I'd be on a panel and I'm sitting alongside the extreme horror author, and I'm going, we write something scary, but aside from that, we have nothing in common here, you know.
Yeah.
And so and at the same time, three things really. As a woman who writes horror fiction, there's always the women in horror panel. And I think those are great. And I have one also. We have a girls rule panel, you know, but the women in horror panel almost felt like, oh, they're women who write horror fiction. Wow. Let's parade some of them out to talk about it. And and then as an African-American person, likewise, Black people writing horror or in film. And I'm just like, it's not as unique as you may think there are. We're out here. We are doing this. And there are a bunch of us. So when I was, got involved as the horror track director, I said, well, we can't do these stereotypical panels that you're going to find at all of these places.
Yeah.
Now you get the trifecta with me. I'm a Black woman who writes psychological horror. So I have all of these things that I know that I don't like to see done at panels. And so when I said, let's do something different, how we write women is important. What is the importance of a final girl? Not just that a woman is writing a horror movie, or there's a woman screaming in the horror movie, or how do we, how do you write for games? How do you craft a story like that? Yeah, I took notes for that one because I would like to do that too. That's another thing I haven't done. And how we had a real paranormal like researcher come on and talk to the panel about the creepiest stuff, and I almost didn't want to be in there. Again, psychological horror. I'm like, that's too much for me. Thank you. Or taboo horror. That doesn't mean extreme or gore. It can, but it doesn't only mean that. It means, what's the stuff that pushes the envelope? How far should we really go? What's next in publishing? These are just things that we cover. And these are topics that I didn't see in other places. And so I wanted to be different. I want to talk about horror things, sure, but there's more to horror than just the guts and the gore. And if you write the guts and the gore, you've still got to craft a good story. So we have panels about how to actually write a daggone horror story. It's not the same as writing a fantasy story. There are differences. So we dive in and we do that because I've experienced the other side, and it's nice and all. I'm glad that we're included, but we can go deeper. So that's what we do at Multiverse.
I'm curious what panel that was part of your curriculum over the years that maybe you thought at the beginning wasn't going to catch fire, but caught enormous fire, and you were surprised by.
Well, I'll say this: I thought Girls Rule was just going to be fun. That is the most heavily attended panel ever in every single year, and I love it. I love it because it's not just your standard, oh, here's some women writing horror fiction. It is, let's talk about, the challenges. Let's talk about creating a really strong female protagonist. Let's talk about, like I said, final girl. Let's talk about these things. Let's subvert the final girl trope, because enough already. We don't always have to have the same cookie cutter thing. How can we make it different? I am so excited that panel is so exciting and so engaging. But every year, I run it back every year. There's only two that I run back every year. It's that one and Monster Mash, which is great because you're having Mark on, because he's a Monster Mash guy.
I was gonna ask you about it, but we'll talk about it.
He and I just texted about that. Right, Rob was like, "I'm staying on for yours because you're." I'll be watching. But the other one that really caught fire the year I did it, and I think I've done it twice, is religion and horror.
Oh.
I thought, well, all right, maybe some people don't want to talk about that, and you can run into that, right? Yeah. But it's not just, the reason I wanted to talk about it is because it's not just our version of Christianity here in the United States. It's religion in horror. I didn't say Christianity in horror. I said religion. And so you dive into so many different things, and then you get to see, how does religion really change what we think about horror? Because what we're afraid of here in the US may not be what people are afraid of in Japan. And that may not be the same that people are afraid of in Brazil. And we've got to talk about how religion comes into play, because it does. And it's amazing. Changes the story completely. And I thought I was going to be the only person kind of pumped about that. And no, I was not.
It's funny you mentioned that. Two things I want to mention. First, I've attended Girls Rule, and to talk about taking mental notes, I took a ton of mental notes. It's not just about, what, women, how women are represented, but what we as men, as myself, can do to help, show that and give more credence to, and how I could be better as a writer. I thought that was very important. And I really enjoyed that aspect of that panel when I attended it the first time. And then I was just going to mention, it's funny you talk about religion and horror. I just watched a film at Slam Dance this year called Underbug, which is a horror thriller about an apocalyptic event where a guy runs into another guy, and he's Muslim, and the Muslims and the Shiites have become bitter enemies, and we're fighting in the streets. And that's because of some kind of apocalyptic thing that was going on, and it was all based around the religion, but there was this horror psychological element to it, which was fantastic. And
awesome.
So it's out there, and I think that's really great.
Yeah, and I think so often we stay in our comfort zone, and that's human nature, right?
Yeah.
But if the unpleasantness that we all experienced has taught us something, it's that we better make the most of these days we have, and to look at other media. Like Netflix has been beautiful, has it not? You can get content from anywhere in the world now. I mean, they have Nigerian horror. I mean, I'm only looking at horror, obviously, but they have, well, not only, but mostly, just being honest and truthful, but Nigerian horror, which I had never watched before. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. That I knew that I liked Japanese horror and Korean horror already, but there were some movies I had not seen. And I was like, well, look at that. And so I've learned some new things, and I've gotten into a couple of I've rewatched some old stuff. There's a golly, what language are they speaking? It's not German. It sounds very close to German, but it's not German. I can't now. What is that? Oh my gosh. It's in my list. I haven't watched it yet. And once I watch it, I'll be able to identify. But I'm like, oh, this concept is great. Okay, I gotta put it on when I'm like awake enough to read the subtitles, because I literally don't speak any of that language at all. And it's wonderful because now I can pick out words in different languages. Like, just because I've watched so much of the content, because we're not the only ones making horror movies, folks. You know, and our ghosts are different. Our fears are different.
Well, one of my favorite horror films of all time is God damn, I can't think of the right title for oh gosh, I just lost the title. But Let Me In, you know.
Oh yeah.
And I think the one thing about horror that's different than any other genre, especially in film, is that there doesn't have to be dialogue.
Right.
That you could scare somebody by not talking at all and
Absolutely.
just following creepiness and describing creepy elements even in novels. You can do it, and the element of that in itself is universal to a lot of people, and I think that's one thing that horror does really, really well.
It does, and I think that for me,
yes, let the right one in. Thank you, Nita.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Because I'm like, I can't get it. I can't get it at all. Wait a minute, do I have that book on the shelf over here? I sure do, but I don't see it this second, but it's on the shelf somewhere. This is my TBR list. The whole thing. It's just, I don't know how I'm ever going to read everything, but listen. I just see stuff I buy. I stuff. I'm like, oh, give me that one. Whatever. For me, it was, and I had this eye-opening moment, this epiphany years and years ago, that I'm not the only person writing, you know, the slow burn.
Right.
You know, and once you open your mind to the fact that we don't have like some sort of corner on the market and see all of the other material that's out there, your mind is literally blown. But if you go to, and I'm not trying to disparage any other cons, I'm not at all. I'm not a big con goer. So, and anyone who knows me knows that. I've been to many, but I don't, the repeat cons, it may not happen. I only repeat really 2, Multiverse and StokerCon. That's really what I repeat. But, and well, on occasion, Balticon. But anyway, beforehand, I had not repeated because the content was very similar everywhere.
Yeah.
So, you know, I as an industry professional, I believe that, you know, I'm a horror author. I should go to StokerCon. That's my professional organization, right? Yeah. But Multiverse provides, and even when I get the chance to leave my track and go to other people's tracks, I can see it happening in their rooms as well. It's just providing this outlet that is so different, and it's so universal and inclusive that it's a beautiful thing to witness, because I'm not seeing that in all these other places. And I want a place where I can feel that I can learn something new, which is, I've been doing this for a really long time. This as in writing for a long time. You know, Joe, I mean, I hate to date myself, but I've been writing for, okay, forget the writing age. I've been publishing. I've been publishing for like 25 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, learning new things. And then, of course, I went to school to study the same stuff that I write about. You know, I'm screenwriting degree and creative writing degree. So me learning something new is not as easy as it may sound. So I'm always looking to find something that can challenge me in that way. And when I've stepped into something last, oh my God, I don't even know what was happening. It was like a cadaver, like an alien cadaver. They were doing some sort of an autopsy on the thing. And I was walking out of my room, and I'm like, because I was done. I didn't have a panel. I just gone to my room to clean something up. I'm like, what's going on in here? Right? Because they were talking about how to accurately describe, alien internal whatever. And I was just enthralled.
Oh,
and it's that kind of neat stuff that you just don't see everywhere.
Yeah.
It blows my mind every time, really.
And one of the cool, we were going to talk about Monster Mash, and I'm going to definitely talk about it with Mark. But one of the cool things about Monster Mash that I really enjoy is the inner conversations that are going on beyond what's going on stage, right? And we're all there to hear the arguments, and really we're there for Mark's performance because Mark is stellar, and I can't wait to talk to him about that. But the little chatter, like you and I sat in a corner and started talking about when they did, I forget, I think it was Aliens or something. We were talking about Sigourney Weaver, and it's just it's such that moment of nerdom when you find the people that can relate to what you're talking about, right? And
Oh yes.
it's so that's one of the coolest things about multiverse, and your room exudes that tremendously, which is, and especially during girls rule panel, because
Yeah.
the first thing that Vanessa says when she starts the panel is, this is an interactive panel, we want to hear you talk to us as
Yeah.
much as we're talking to you. But multiverse really and the horror track especially really defines that aspect of where it feels like we're sitting together in a circle and talking about this, not sitting and being lectured on a panel, right?
Right. And it's weird because in my day job I teach, so lecturing
Yeah,
to people is something I have to do. But again, I feel for these kids sometimes. I tell them because it's just like this right now, and
yeah.
I can see my students laughing, and I'm just like, hey, as long as you're having fun. I mean, honestly. Um, but there is that feeling of just lecturing at in a lot of panels, and some things are
Mhm.
heavy, and you've got to sort of, but you know, you didn't necessarily pay to go to school when you go to a convention.
No.
You wanted to learn something, but that didn't mean that you were there and you were being studious about it all. And
Right.
but at the same time, you want to come away with information. So I, I don't know. I approach my life this way. So maybe that's why the panels turn out that way because you've seen me sitting in the back of the room. I usually attend like every panel I can,
Yeah.
and I'll just yell out something in the middle of their panel because I'm watching the panel too.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not here. I'll say something, I'll make a comment, I'll start having a conversation because this is, for the people who are on the panels and the professionals who are, there to teach, if you will, whatever, have to start the conversations. Or at least from my perspective, I am not going to I'm not taking myself too seriously, but I do
Mhm,
have stuff to say. I
mhm.
mean, I'm doing these things, and I am interested in helping someone who's starting out and saying, okay, look, you can do that if you want to, but when I did it, I completely fell on my face, and this is why.
Mhm,
you know, do what you will with that. Um, and I'm also there, like you said, to find my people.
mhm.
I was one panel in there. We were talking about Hannibal, Mads Mikkelsen's version of the TV show, and I was just like, "Listen to me, that is the best show I've ever seen in my life." And I absolutely love Hannibal. And I like sat in the audience. I didn't even sit in my little chair. I sat in the audience. I'm just like, I'm in this conversation because we were having a round table
Mhm,
because that way you come away feeling enriched, feeling
mhm,
like you participated, you learned something new, maybe you taught someone something new. And that to me is why we gather.
mhm,
Not for me to speak at you, you know, but to have a conversation and yeah, geek out about something.
mhm.
Why not? Right?
Yeah.
Oh God. Mads Mikkelsen is amazing. Like he could just stand there and I'd say, oh my God, what a fantastic performance. I'm a
Anita said
fan.
she loved that show. She says it's so twisted, but it was stellar.
Yeah, that's what I was responding to. I just legitimately, but for me, multiverse provides that outlet. I have
Yeah,
not been in a con before where there was such interaction. That just
yeah.
I haven't.
Which
Usually the
really,
person who's running the room sits in the back and they're quiet.
yeah. Which really buzzes the energy too. I
Right.
mean, you come out of that feeling like either you want to write something or you get an idea, or which is, I think, ultimately for us as creatives, the most important thing about elements about going to cons is being around people that give you the same energy you would have if you were sitting here by yourself just trying to come up with an idea. And that, I think, I mean, I wrote like 200 words the first Monster Mash I attended because I was
Oh,
like, oh, you know what? There was just, and we're talking about things that have already been done, so it
right.
wasn't, but it was just that creative energy that surge you get from
Yeah.
being in that room, that you just kind of, you can't ignore it,
No,
you
you
know.
can't. Monster Mash is the best game ever, though. I mean, some of those monsters, I have no idea. I don't know how he
Yeah,
finds.
there was a couple.
I'm like, what is he talking about? Thank goodness they allow phones in there and we can look it up, because I'm like, I can't play. I don't know what that monster is. I don't even know what. Like, I couldn't. Monster Mash, and I can't wait to hear him describe it. But it's like, I don't even want to give it away because he's going to do a better justice than me. But it's a game. I loved it at standing room only every year.
Yeah.
And Mark is just a natural performer anyway. He's a great creative, a wonderful writer, filmmaker, but he is a natural performer. And he just it is a laugh fest, but you also come out of there feeling energized. You see the people that you talk to during the day, or you might have bought a book from them at a table, you might have conversed with them at dinner, been in the art, in a panel with them or witness whatever, and you see them in their element, working with their peers and having a blast at it. Because I think the misconception of people, especially folks who don't come to cons and things like that, is that all writers, writers are in competition with each other all the time. We don't mingle, don't talk shop at all. We are in competition and we're just sort of cordial when we see each other. That is so not real. It's just not a reality. It is not. When we see each other, we embrace with a hug. You and I definitely do. And we embrace with a hug because we genuinely mean that. We form these bonds. And when we get to sit down and talk about whether Medusa could fight Dracula, like, what a ridiculous concept. But yeah, we're going to chat about that. It's going to be fantastic. And there's going to be lots of laughing. It's so much fun. I don't want to give anything else away because I know he's going to.
So let's talk a little bit about what's coming for you. Have you looked at something new that you're going to bring into the elements of your track this year so far? Is there something that you can give us a little teaser about?
I wrote a note just earlier today. Let me look at this note and see what I'm happy to say out loud. I was looking at. Yeah, I have something that I'd really like to. It's not set in stone, right? But I'm really trying to talk about horror covers this year, like the covers of the book.
Cool.
And I have not done that yet, because the art folks were sort of tied into their art. We had, the room and all that stuff, but I want to pull them into this room, much like we did last year with the writing for RPG games, because it's an important aspect, especially if you're considering self-publishing, or if you get the opportunity to work closely with your small press publisher to have some, a way to contribute to the discussion about what the cover can look like. But there's some things you can't just make your cover look like a fantasy cover or like a sci-fi cover. Certain things are important for horror fiction, even if it's psychological. I mean, there's just some stuff. And I think that, I can't speak to it. I'm not an artist. I'm always like, please show me something that looks good.
Yeah, me too.
And so we have to, defer to the artists, but it'd be nice to understand their rhyme and their reason. So I'm going to try to do that this year.
That's awesome. That would be an awesome panel. I hope I have time to go and see that. I hope I'm not on a panel at the same time that's on. But
I hope not. You know you're gonna come see me anyway. My room is like.
I'll be there. Room. I'll be there.
For real, it's like the hangout room, and I love it because I don't leave very often. So I'm so thankful you guys come and see me.
So, what is your favorite thing about being a horror author? What do you feel like is your favorite aspect of what you do?
I'm going to tell you something. And this is no joke. Yesterday, I'm not playing. This is just perfect timing. Yesterday, I was talking with someone who I respect and is just reading my first novel for the first time ever, And she said, because if you know me in my daily life, this is literally me. Notice there are no cobwebs in my back. And this is my office. It's bright. The other wall that you can't see is orange. Like, this is a gray and orange wall. I'm a very bright, bubbly person. I am, but I like this stuff, right? And she said to me, you know something? I really think there's something wrong with you. And I was like, really? And she said, first of all, I can't put the book down. We were having a meeting and she had to she's listening to the audiobook version. She had to put it on pause and she was frustrated because she wanted to keep going, which is fantastic. And she says, but I know you and I listened to this and I'm wondering, just what's the matter? And I hope to God whatever's wrong doesn't snap in front of me, basically. But I can tell something's wrong with you. And I know that sounds strange to people, but that is the biggest compliment as a psychological horror author that I could ever get. That means, because I don't walk around like Elvira, whom I think is amazing, but that's just not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I walk around like this all day. I'm literally wearing capris down here. Okay. There's flip flops and capris and some orange nail polish. Like, legit, this is me. Okay. But I'll come home and I'll write these things, and that someone can see the duality and go, what the? Perfect. Because especially if you are so touched that you can't fathom that I put that together, or that you don't want to stop reading it, but oh my gosh, it's creeping you out. Biggest compliment ever. So what do I like about being a horror author? Impacting people and having them, second guess everything they know about me, about the world, about whatever story might be going on, because I planted that in them. It's perfect.
So you're doing essays now, you said. That's something new for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be, you would not shock me if we talked this time next year and you said, I'm putting out a graphic novel. I mean, you dabble in all the aspects of writing, creativity that you can dabble in. I'm wondering though, when are we going to see an Elmarie Wood film? I want to see this happen.
Oh,
I've been bugging you about this for a few years now.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. And yes, honestly, some of y'all really got to me too. So I have a short film that's done in the can,
cool.
Done now. Literally, my producer and I are talking about where we're going to submit it to, get it out there. We're trying to use this thing as our springboard for our combined efforts to see, because I got feature length stuff. So we want to see if we can, gain some interest, gain some, traction, and see what we do. But yeah, there is a movie, and it is fun. It is.
Right. I better see this film. You better show this to me.
Yeah, we just need to go off into Zoom separately.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I better get a screener link. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. No, I write the screenplays and I want to just write. That's really because I don't want to do the film stuff. I think it's neat. And boy, was it awesome to be on set. I mean, that's cool stuff, but that's not my part. Just and so, but at the same time, just like you were saying, just like all of you filmy people were telling me that I need to make something, because that is the piece I can put in front of someone to show them visually what it is. And so I did it. I listened to you. It's done.
Nice. Yeah, if that's the only one you do, hey, you did it. You tried it, and you now know you have some set experience. So that's going to help you in your writing. That's going to help you in figuring things out too. So all that's valuable for you.
Oh, I'm super proud of it too. It's really, it was fun. It was just a great time. Some of the silly challenges that you bump into when you get on set, because I was only there for like a day, and I'm like, my God, are you kidding? But it was so cool to watch. I love watching people in their element, and like my producer and director, they were.
Nice.
I was in awe of them. I was just sitting back. I looked like just all day just grinning. So it's so cool.
So tell everybody where they can get some of these books out, and where they can check out Speculative Fiction Academy and all that. And so give everybody your links, even though they're already in the description. But go ahead and give them to everybody and let them know where they can find you.
Absolutely. Well, I do have a couple of new releases actually. I have them in front of me, so I'm gonna hold on, which I never have them in front of me. But these two books go hand in hand. This is a short story collection.
Nice.
And this is a novella. The people in this novella are reading this short story collection.
Oh,
when they finish stories from the short story collection, they die. So are you tough enough to read the short story collections? All I'm asking, but those are out anywhere books are sold. As are all of my titles. If you want to go and learn a little bit more about me and just sort of poke around and see what's going on, go to www.elmariewood.com. The Speculative Fiction Academy is exactly that, speculativeffictionacademy.com. Nice. We offer like we're up to 70 courses now. They're all online. So if you're interested in learning some cool stuff, come see us there. Of course, Multiverse, come hang out at Multiverse and come to the horror track. I'll be in there. I'm usually sitting right there.
And I will see you then, my friend. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this bit. And we're going to be right back. We've got a sponsor from Multiverse that wants to talk to you all for a couple minutes. And then I will bring on the one and only Mark L. Abbott. So everybody hang tight and we'll be right back. Thanks.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Regardless what's out there for you, your body is your temple. Isn't it time for you to take control of your own fitness and well-being? To tell your story. In Dungeons & Dragons, chaotic good is a character alignment that reflects one whose heart is pure, but who does not take the law at face value. They question authority and forge their own path based on their own value system and morals. They value freedom and individuality over social norms and rules. CG Fitness views fitness and health in the same way. We are client-centered, body-positive. We focus on the individual client's needs and goals without trying to fit them into the standards set up by the fitness industry. Each client has a unique background, goal, and body that deserves to be valued and considered when working together. We don't expect all of our clients to look, act, and feel or need the same thing. Some clients want weight loss programs. Some join us for the pain management and reduction. Others have worked with us for pre-surgical body change needs. No matter why you come to us, we will find a way to help you level up. There is no one-size-fits-all magical answer to fitness and health goals, and there is no one-size-fits-all body shape. There's no quick, easy route to take. Making health improvements is hard work, but we are here to guide you through the journey. CG Fitness is about making improvements at your pace for you. So now let's pull out your character sheet and roll for that initiative. So if you're interested in how Kira and her team can help you, you can go to chaoticgoodfitness.com/services. So choose your path to better health and good fitness and tell your own story at chaoticgoodfitness.com. Back, and I have the extreme pleasure of having Mr. Mark Abbott joining us. This is awesome. I'm real excited. Thank you for being here, sir. It's so nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. Thank you.
So tell everybody a little bit about yourself. We did an intro earlier you probably didn't catch, but just to give everybody a refresher on who you are and what you do.
Okay, so as stated, my name is Mark L. Abbott. I am a horror author. I am a award-winning storyteller, actor. I've been a playwright. I'm now a teacher. I'm teaching. I just started teaching this year. So I'm a person who wears many hats, but horror has always been my wheelhouse, my first love. And it's something I've been very passionate about since I was a kid. So that's really the horror genre is where I reside mostly. But I love telling stories. I like engaging people with stories, whether they be true life stories or creative stories that I've come up with. That's really who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to talk about a lot of what you do at Multiverse with one specific, as you were hearing earlier when you were backstage about. But I'm kind of curious from you, from a grandiose perspective, what is it about Multiverse that keeps you coming back? What do you love about it so much, and being a part of the horror track especially?
You know, Multiverse is one of those conventions where it's intimate. And it's not to say that a convention cannot be intimate, but it's intimate in a different way. Most conventions are large. they encompass a lot of things. You have to try to keep track of every little thing.
Mm.
I'm a person who goes to New York Comic Con almost every year. The only time I missed it was during the pandemic. And I love it wholeheartedly, but you get lost in it.
Yeah.
And with Multiverse, this was an opportunity to be a part of something. I don't want to say, I don't like using the word niche, because we're not niche.
No.
There's so many different wonderful components to Multiverse that I enjoy. And I've sat, and I mean, I'm part of the horror track, but I have sat on a science fiction track here and there. I've been a part of some of the games outside of and the discussions. So it's not, it takes you a little bit out of your comfort zone. It allows you to move about with other authors and other writers that you may not normally have an opportunity to speak with. When when we're out there with our books, you know, we're never really, there's no horror section of writers standing around. So I could be around anybody. I'm sat among fantasy writers, and we've kind of gone back and forth on our favorite things that we like about each other's genres. You know, graphic novelists, you know, just, hey, I've always wondered, how do you go about coming up with A, B, C, and D? And, you know, I've wondered the same thing about horror. So I really enjoy being around that atmosphere and meeting people that you may have crossed paths with online, but now you get to actually meet and talk with them and get to know a little bit more about what they do.
That's awesome. I love all that. Do you have, I mean, obviously, I think Monster Mash is probably your favorite panel, but do you have a panel that you love doing other than that you really look forward to every year?
You know, any one of the panels where I can sit and talk about, I think one year we did something on cult films. Those kind of out of the way kind of conversations that you think you're the only person that's into this thing until you walk in the room and you're like, oh wow, I didn't think so many other people. I can be honest and say I don't have one. I really enjoy all the panels I've ever either been on. In fact, I think it was year one. I still laugh at this. I didn't know I was moderating. And we were all sitting there and everything was set up. And I said, so who's moderating? And I think it was El Marie was like, you are. Oh, okay. But you wouldn't have, I mean, the crowd laughed and everything, but you wouldn't, it flowed. You know, there was no, oh my God, I wasn't prepared, or, you know, it was like, okay, I know what panel I'm on. I know how to groove with this. So that was one of the fun parts.
Yeah, El Marie and I talked a little bit about the idea of the panels being so interactive, being so interchangeable, being more like hanging out at a dinner table with friends and talking more than, you know, being lectured or being, you know, spouted question and answer formatting all the time, which is very unique. That's a unique thing. I go to a lot of cons, and that's a very unique thing to Multiverse that I think is very different. And I feel like there is that's a lot of what you were saying. Intimacy is the perfect word for that, because that's creating that intimacy there, because we all feel like we're all being heard and we're all being taught. We're all talking about the same, you know, we're on the same page. We're finding our people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I was going to say, after year one, I've met so many different people, and people I've wanted to meet for the longest. And I got an opportunity, and it didn't feel fanboyish.
Yeah.
You know, you go into the bar and you see a writer that you've admired for years, and you sit down, and it's like meeting an old friend.
Yeah.
And suddenly we're not even talking about the work anymore. We're talking about where we're from, our city, you know, what's going on at home. Maybe we might gloss over some politics that may lead into some work that we're working on, but it never feels like, it starts out with that feeling, and then it's like, oh, okay, cool.
All right, so let's talk about the late night experience that I think if you've been to Multiverse multiple times and you've never experienced this, I know that it goes on in conjunction with other panels. And last year I had to work going back and forth between it, but I wasn't going to miss it because I went the first time that I went to Multiverse and I was just like blown away by how amazing this panel is. It's called the Monster Mash. Tell everybody a little bit about the concept of Monster Mash, what it's about, and how it works.
So the Monster Mash really is it's a very fun way to kind of delve into the things that you love. It's friendly competition. It's literally two teams that are assigned monsters. And sometimes the monsters are from kind of the same, I might put two serial killers together or something. And sometimes it's so far off that you're like, there's no way in this world these two would ever meet. But the idea is to have both of these parties basically explain how their monster could pretty much beat up on the other one. And the crowd decides which one convinced them that, I think we're at a point now when I don't think people even are convinced. They just love the argument to the point where whoever has the better argument in this, they're the winner. And my job is, it's really just to lay down the law and keep things going. And what's funny is I don't think when I started it, I thought of myself as an intricate part of it. Like I was just sort of like, I'm the guy that's just going to assign things. But then the panel themselves drag me into the fight, or the audience has something to say. And then, then I turn around and I'm like, okay, now I have to open up and get creative with everybody.
Yeah, you're very good about holding the rules, but there was a moment the last year that I think will stay with me for the rest of my life, and that is the moment when you threw up the clipboard and said, "I'm out of here. I'm walking out. This is dumb."
I think there was a couple of times I had done that. I think the one you're talking about was when it was Cthulhu against the Kraken, and somebody went, and what was so funny was that there's no rules about not drinking. So the person who decided to argue was already had a couple of drinks, and she jumped up with H.P. Lovecraft's entire racist and I was like, you know what, and what's funny is that I should have seen it coming because of what had happened in the first thing that she answered. But it was all fun. Nobody took it to heart. I wasn't like, what are you doing? But then when she stood up and it clicked, I was like, oh no. I walked right into this one. But it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of laughs.
Yeah, I mean, do you like that it flexes your acting muscle a little bit for you? Because you do, it is almost performance-like in the manner in which you present things, and you use dramatic pauses to kind of get people on edge a little bit and things. You can see your theater training coming through in a lot of this.
Yeah, it's because you know what, it's not meant to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So I approach it from the vein that, I'm not serious. Like, listen to what I'm telling you to argue. And I would really like you to try and sit here and convince people of this. And even my own ridiculousness of it is what, when I think about it, I'm like, I just came up with a bunch of monsters that, sometimes I think last year my favorite was Tanya, when I mentioned the creature from Death Note, and she completely lost her mind. She's like, finally we have an anime, and just I was like, if this was Perry Mason, I think Perry would have lost, because you really were determined to prove to everybody that Death Note would win. And yeah, I approach it from a fun, because if I walk in there trying to be serious, or just going, come on, stop giving me ridiculous answers to these. Come on and be serious. I mean, the whole idea is supposed to be fun. So,
and you get a lot of feedback from the crowd. You do some crowd work during the time that everybody's coming up with their arguments, and talk a little bit about that and how much that feeds you and how much you enjoy that aspect of it.
What's my favorite part is just listening to, once the teams have it, listening to people argue among themselves in the crowd over why this wouldn't work. And it's almost like watching, it's like watching people play Uno. And then suddenly your partner is messing you, and you're like, what are you doing? And what it is, I know, like, over the years, I've listened to people say, well, he should have said this creature. And I'm like, I'm going to hold on to that one for next year. Sometimes I hear monsters that people say you should have brought this guy up, or you should have brought that person up. Or they will carry, I have seen people carry it right out. The show is over and they're in the hallway still arguing these points, and it's like, wow, really? It's we have to let it go. But the crowd does feed it, because I like the crowd's energy, and I want the crowd to participate. I want them to be, the idea is, this is an all-inclusive piece. This isn't just about the people up front. It's also about the people in the audience and how you guys feel and how you're going to react. And, you get a couple of hecklers, which adds to the humor, because it's like, this isn't a comedy show, Sam, so I love that the audience gets into it. I love that they come ready. I've had people ask me, well, which monsters are you doing this year? And I'm like, I'm not telling you ahead of time who's going on the list. I was like, you gotta wait, come in and see, and just have fun with it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your prep for this. How many do you have in the can, and how often do you switch? Does the crowd and the audience give you motivation to switch up something maybe that you had planned, because it does seem like at times you have changed your mind or thought about doing a different one than you would originally plan. So do you have multiple different scenarios for that? How prepared are you when you go into this thing?
So usually what I do, I come up with about 20, 10 on one side, 10 on the other. And what I will do is I will initially put the monsters together that I know, okay, for example, I would say, okay, Godzilla is going to fight the kaiju from the J.J. Abrams film. That escapes my mind right now. So I know for a fact that these two, and I've got in my head, okay, I think I know what's going to happen. But let's say these two are paired up like fifth. And somewhere along the line, somebody in the audience goes, well, it would be great if, he had Godzilla fighting like a mud monster. And I go in my list, I'm like, oh yeah, I got a mud monster down here. I'm going to go ahead and switch that. I'm going to change that for the next one, because it kind of gives the audience an opportunity to feel like, oh wow, I'm gonna kind of get a little bit of what I want out of this. You give the people what they want. But normally what I will do is maybe a couple of days before Multiverse. I don't do this months in advance because it just, because the list will change.
Yeah.
And what I try to do is I try to go through each genre, horror, fantasy, science fiction, and anime. And then I try to figure out, okay, let me look and see which ones do I know. And now let me do some homework on some that people are fans of. And that's pretty much how I ended up with the Death Note situation, because I was looking for 2 anime characters to go at it. And I was like, oh, wow, this would be interesting to see what people would say. I think what's funny is when I come up with stuff and everybody's looking at me like, who is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, are we serious right now? It's like, it's, and then it's like, you start seeing the phones come out and people are like looking, I'm like, all right.
There's also times when you have a monster that has reappeared in something or has been reinvented, and you have to clarify which one they go after too. That happens a lot.
That I think one year, I think this was the first year we came back, and someone pulled a little stunt on me where I said, I think it was the Critters versus the Gremlins, and somebody was like, which Gremlins? And I don't know why it snapped in my head, but I started singing the Mogwai, doing the Mogwai, and I was like, that gremlin. And they were like, oh, and I was like, oh, for goodness sake. I was like, how many gremlin movies do we have? And then I realized, I'm like, oh, wait, there's a Richard Matheson story. I think somebody was like, well, you could have used a gremlin from the Bugs Bunny cartoon. I'm like, you know what? What is wrong with you guys? I'm like, I thought I had problems and you guys are giving me. But yeah, that's usually my niche. I'll create two lists, about 20 monsters interchangeably, and then I may know these are the 2 I go with, or I might look down the list and go, you know what? I think I want to change it up and make this interesting, and put 2 creatures together that would never would never meet up. And
now, who's winning? Does that factor into how you're going to change it up a little bit? If you see somebody have a strength or something like that on the other team, but they're not connecting to the audience, would you throw them a bone a little bit?
No, not really. I like to watch them suffer. They have to convince the audience. That is the point of it. And if the audience is not, if you're not convincing the crowd, then I can kind of give you some stuff, but I don't know. The wonderful part about it is that I don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
So if I mention like I said one year I had Chucky against the Zuni fetish doll. Now if you've never seen Trilogy of Terror, and you're on that team and you're like, what's the Zuni fetish doll?
Yeah.
But you hear the audience, they say, oh, like, they know. So it's I kind of want them to, I don't want to say suffer, but I want them to have fun and loosen it up a little bit. I think the only thing is that I'm a little iffy about the whole using the phone thing, only because if you're using it just basically because you're like, I've never heard of this, I just need reference. That's one thing. But I always worry that somebody's going to start reading about what the monster can do, and then just suddenly start regurgitating stuff, and then it's like, I don't know, So.
But you probably could sniff that out if that was to ever happen.
Yeah, more than likely. I could.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna tell a little story about my experience at Monster Mash, because I don't know how often this has happened before, but so the first year I went to Multiverse was the year that you had a tie. You had a tie between the 2 teams, and you decided to let the audience take on the panelist as the tiebreaker. And was that something that you had in your back pocket, or was that something you came up with on the fly? I'm kind of curious about that.
That actually came up on the fly, and that was because the audience was so into it.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I think it would be nice to kind of let the audience play, because you could tell they wanted to play.
Yeah.
You know, it's they're sitting there and they've got their own conversations going back and forth, and it gets to the point where I think as we were closing it, we were getting to the end. I said, you know, I could try to come up with another monster, but I would like to see how the audience handle it. And I thought that was just, I laughed because I watched how the audience actually huddled together and started having their own conversation, and then trying to pick who it was that was going to speak for everybody.
Yeah.
And that was, I think that was something that I kind of carried over for the rest of them. I said, you know what, they loved it so much that I thought this would be great to have to be something they do all the time when we do the Monster Mash. So I'm glad that people are that invested in being in the room, that when it gets to be that moment, they're all like, you know what, I definitely want to participate in this, you know. And
so let's talk a little bit about you and what's going on with you. Are you're a horror writer for the most part. So what is it about horror that you love? What is it that you gravitated to it at a very early age in your life? So and tell people a little bit about that story, about how it came to you and what it means to you to be a horror writer.
Oh, well, I put the blame solely on my father. He was my dad was a huge, he loved books and he loved movies, and he was the kind of guy that he just loved to share that experience with me. My love for horror came when I was very young. Channel 13 PBS here in New York used to do on Saturday nights the old Universal horror movie. And my dad and I would, my father had this thing where he would, how you get the radio previews of a movie coming out. Well, my father was that guy, and he would be like, Dracula's on tonight. And I'm like, who's Dracula? You don't know about the Prince of Darkness, the man who will come. And he's like, oh, we have to watch this. And we would sit and watch these Universal horror films. And it was just to watch them and just kind of talk about them with him. The monsters were fascinating. And then as time went on and I got older, of course, being a child of the 70s and the 80s, we started growing up in the age of the slasher flick. How far can we push the envelope with the murders and stuff? My father checked out because he was like, I'm not doing all of that. I think he made it to Halloween, and then he was like, yeah, Friday the 13th, all of that's you. I'm not sitting through that blood and gut. And he introduced me. My mom introduced me to Edgar Allan Poe, and the basic horror stories and stuff like that. And so for me, monsters were always just this fascinating. There's something, just especially werewolves. I loved werewolves when I was a kid. This whole ideology that you could transform and become something else, and you had completely lost control of who you are, was just absolutely fascinating to me. And I just fell in love with the genre. And in my teen years, I voraciously ate it up wherever I could get it. Clive Barker became my wheelhouse. I mean, I started with Stephen King, and then a buddy of mine in school, he was like, have you heard of Clive Barker? And I was like, no. And he's like, oh, you need to read the Books of Blood, and then, my father, once I got to that point, my father was like, there's something wrong with you. I had subscribed to Fangoria magazine. I really wish I had a picture of what my bedroom looked like, because he was like, I can't even go in there. He's got posters strewn across the wall of all of these horrifying images and things of that nature. But when I was in high school, I had decided then, I said, I want to be a horror writer. I was absolutely fascinated with Barker and King and a lot of the writers of that time. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I wanted to make movies, and I wanted to make horror stories. The movie thing didn't pan out, but a lot of my earlier screenplays, I was like, you know what, I could easily turn these into books or short stories. And I started chopping them up and working them that way. And it was touch and go, because when I first started, I was self-published, and my first 2 books were not even horror stories. They were young adult novels, and one was sort of I guess you would call it inspirational story about God and the devil fighting for a man's soul in a card game, which was basically spawned because of the death of my father. When my father died, it was a kind of a coping story for me to answer questions I couldn't answer. But slowly but surely, I rolled right into horror, and haven't looked back since. It's really a fun. I like being scared. And I think the thing is about writing horror. The challenge is scaring people.
Yeah.
Not disturbing them, because you can write a disturbing story, but to truly scare people, because we have been so desensitized with the way horror has come. I remember literally shielding my eyes watching the original Friday the 13th. Like, I remember being terrified of that film, and which is why it's still my favorite film now. It doesn't have the same punch that it had when I first saw it.
Right.
But I remember just screaming at certain points and just being like, oh my God, and I like that now there are some movies. I mean, Shudder, the streaming service, every once in a while will have a really good one. And I'm like, and other people are like, you watch that garbage. That was trash. And I'm like, yeah, but it invokes something. And that's really the thing about horror. The wonderful thing about horror is that you can write it, you can scare yourself, but you're safe when it's over.
Yeah.
And I even tell people there have been nights when I have been working and I get to a really scary part in the story, and someone in my house will come up, put their hand, hey, and I will just, what have you lost your mind? And it's like, and I'm like, how invested was I in this whole thing that I forgot where I was? You get so immersed in your own work that you scare yourself. But yeah, that's always been my thing. I love the genre. I really do.
Well, we'll need to sit down and have a drink and talk a little bit about horror film. I got a story for you about my first experience with horror films. My father is very much similar to yours in how he introduced me to the genre. So we'll have to talk about that when we see each other in October. But thank you, Mark, for being here and taking the time to talk to me about your experience in Multiverse and yourself. And it was awesome to chat with you as always. And tell everybody where they can find you and check out what you write.
Everything is on my website, www.whoismarklabbott.com. Once you go there, the windows will open up. You will see everything from my film work to my writing, where to buy my books, where my appearances are going to be. And I will be at Multiverse this year. I plan to be there in October, and I'm looking forward to it. And you can find me there or on Who is Mark L. Abbott on Facebook. That's where I mostly update all of my stuff on my work.
Nice. Awesome. All right. And everybody, something that is very unique to Multiverse as well is the art show. And here's a little something about that. And then we'll wrap up our show and say goodnight. Thank you again, Mark. It was nice chatting with you.
Same here. Thank you.
And now, another reason why, among many, you should be attending Multiverse. Reason 1002, the art show. The Multiverse Art Show features science fiction, fantasy, horror, and comic-themed artwork for you to browse and bid on in a silent auction format. Some of the field's best artists were on display in 2022, including the works of Multiverse artist Guest of Honor Nyla Magruder, whose art you're seeing now. But the other cool aspect of the Multiverse Art Show is the fact that you get to vote on your favorites. For a good period of time during the convention, there is a vote that takes place among anybody who attends Multiverse, and individual art and artists are awarded. What are you waiting for? Join us today. Go to multiversecon.org and register to become a member of the Multiverse. I know you're going to hear me say this each and every week, and I'm sorry, but I'm just going to keep repeating it. If that doesn't get you to this con, I don't know what will. The conversations that we just had, the idea of horror, if you're a horror author or a horror fan and you're not coming to just be at the Monster Mash, there's something really wrong with you. Really, seriously, you need to come. You need to enjoy this. Multiverse is an experience unlike any other experience, and I really, really think that you should check it out. And we'll have more proof of that next week. We'll have more people to talk about Multiverse, and we'll again go through another aspect of it that is very unique to the con itself, and we'll just have nice conversations, because as you know, it's always time to go indie now. And we'll see you guys again next week. Thank you for joining us.